Greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm very happy to be with you today to talk about the neocolonialism sickness and its remedy, revolutionary KAMITISm. First, I want to thank Brother Shakara for giving me this opportunity and also give a shout out to the Al-Kebulan revivalist movement who has been organizing for many years. So my name is Abiola and I am a founding member of a Pan-Africanist organization called Nation Kamit, mainly based in France and in the Congo. As you probably know, France has been one of the most dangerous colonial powers the world has ever seen. It has attacked, conquered, and enslaved a huge portion of our continent for many centuries. Officially, most of the territories previously under the French yoke obtained their independence around 1960. They have got national borders, they have got national anthems, they have got pretty flags, and most importantly, they have each got their soccer teams. One thing that they don't have though is independence. One thing they don't have is freedom. What do they really have then? What they really got since the 60s, 1960s, is called neocolonialism. Under neocolonialism, national anthems do not matter. National flags do not matter. National soccer teams do not matter. Even the presidents do not matter. Under neocolonialism, the only things that matter are the interests of the neocolonial power. It means that you may live in Accra, but your life is ruled by people in New York, playing with remote control. It means that you may live in Abidjan, but your life is governed by people in Paris. They are eating cheese and drinking wine while you suffer. Under neocolonialism, for most people, life is horribly hard. It's hard to find jobs. It's hard to find enough money to feed your family. It's hard to find enough money to go to the hospital, to buy medicines. Almost everything in your daily life is painful. Your whole life looks like a non-stop painful sickness, because it is. This sickness is called neocolonialism. So what exactly is neocolonialism? How does it work? How can we break free from it? In order to understand what neocolonialism is, we need to go back in time. We need to go back to very ancient times, because colonialism as well as neocolonialism have very ancient roots. So, who were the first Africans to experience the first version of neocolonialism? I think it was Kemet, ancient Egypt. In 671 BC, Kemet under King Tahaka was at war with the Assyrians. The Assyrians had built a formidable militaristic state, the most efficient and terrifying killing machine of the time. The war was ferocious, and in the end, unfortunately, King Tahaka lost. The Assyrian king, Esarhaddon, marched into the Egyptian city of Memphis and sacked it. Here is what Esarhaddon wrote in his victory tale. I slew multitudes of Tahaka's men, and I smote him 5 times with the point of my javelin, with wounds from which there were no recovery. Memphis, his royal city, in half a day, with mines, tunnels, assaults, I besieged, I captured, I destroyed, I devastated, I burned with fire. His queen, his harem, Ushanauru, his heir, and the rest of his sons and daughters, his property and his goods, his horses, his cattle, his sheep, in countless numbers I carried off to Assyria. The root of Cush I tore up out of Egypt, and not one therein escaped to submit to me. Overall, of Egypt, I appointed anew kings, viceroys, governors, commandants, overseers, and scribes. Offerings and fixed dues I established for Ashur, and the great gods for all time. My royal tributes and tax, yearly without ceasing, I imposed upon them. I will read again this part because it's the roots of neocolonialism today. Over all of Egypt, I appointed anew kings, viceroys, governors, commandants, overseers, and scribes. Offerings and fixed dues I established for Ashur and the great gods for all time. My royal tribute and tax, yearly without ceasing, I imposed upon them. Even when most of Assyrian troops, so end quote, even most of Assyrian troops went back to Assyria, the new leaders of Kemet were Assyria's men and women. They were no longer working for Kemet. They were working for Assyria. They were working to make Assyria greater. That's what we have in most of African countries today. Leaders who are led by foreign interests and destroy their countries and their people to make other people greater. Here is how Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, explained neocolonialism in his 1965 book, Neo-Colonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. The essence of neocolonialism is that the state which is subject to it is in theory independent and has all of the outward trappings of international sovereignty. In reality, its economic system and thus its political policy is directed from outside. The methods and forms of this direction can take various shapes. For example, in an extreme case, the troops of the imperial power may garrison the territory of a neocolonial state and control the government of it. More often, however, neocolonialist control is exercised through economic or monetary means. The neocolonial state may be obliged to take the manufactured products of the imperialist power to the exclusion of competing products from elsewhere. Control over government policy in the neocolonial state may be secured by payments toward the costs of running the state, by the provision of civil servants in positions where they can dictate policy, and by monetary control over foreign exchange through the imposition of a banking system controlled by the imperial power. Obviously, end quote, obviously, the goal of a neocolonialist power is to exploit all the material resources of its neocolonies in order to enrich itself. The essence of neocolonialism is to have countries that look independent but are actually governed by foreign interest. Now that we have an understanding of what neocolonialism is at a basic level, let's look at how neocolonialism works actually in the African world. Let's look at some of the principles under which neocolonialism operates. The first principle we will look at is hiding. The second principle is puppeteering, making puppets. The third principle is brainwashing. The fourth principle is stealing. And the fifth, last principle is killing. So, how neocolonialism works using hiding. First, hiding. Here is what Baba Kwame Nkrumah had to say about this principle in his book, Neo-Colonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. Neocolonialism is also the worst form of imperialism for those who practice it. It means power without responsibility. And for those who suffer from it, it means exploitation without redress. In the neocolonialist territories, since the former colonial power has, in theory, relinquished political control, if the social conditions occasioned by neocolonialism cause a revolt, like we see today in Mali or Haiti, for example, the local neocolonialist government can be sacrificed and another equally subservient one substitute in its place. In contrast with what was done during colonialism, neocolonialism prefers not to be seen. This is why people often ask why African countries are doing so badly, despite having been independent for decades. This is why even African people are confused. If you take a country like Mali, it has been in a deep crisis for many years, and people have died in order to change and get better governments. The governments have hindered change many times, but they haven't got better. People are still in the streets today. Of course, you don't officially have a foreign force in your territory. Let's say France, for example, occupying the country and appointing French governors or presidents at the helm of a country. So everything is certainly Malians' own faults. It's a little bit like when you are bitten by mosquitoes in the dark and end up slapping yourself in the face. People will look at you from far away, will think you are crazy, but you are not crazy. It's just that they don't see the mosquitoes. Let's quote again Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. The truth behind the headlines. Really, to understand what goes on in the world today, it is necessary to understand the economic influences and pressures that stand behind the political events. The financial columns of the world's press give, in fact, the news behind the news. Every few days, we come upon such newspaper announcements as Morgan Greenfell participates in new French bank, or African banking group, or consortium gains voting power in Hewlett, South African sugar monopoly, or new factoring company set up in Germany. These are newspaper headlines, actually taken at random. However, when examined even briefly, the facts reveal an attenuated lower line of connection between powerful financial groups that exert the most decisive pressure upon the happenings of our time. The facts relate to the men and interest directly involved or indirectly connected with the rearrangements the articles cover. Not that the full facts are ever revealed. On the contrary, they are more often concealed, and it takes knowledge of the careers of the personalities and groups which the articles linked to see behind them the inevitable direction of the reported arrangements and their intrinsic meaning in terms of economic and political power. We like to say, end quote, we like to say that the revolution won't be televised. We also need to know that the counter-revolution won't be televised either. Most of the time, neocolonialism operates behind the curtains. For example, selecting, nurturing, training, and putting puppets at the helm of our states. Those puppets that we call presidents, prime ministers, generals, and so on are simply performers. They are acting on a script that has been written in a foreign language in a foreign land. That's puppeteering. Let's start with a personal anecdote. I have an acquaintance, a brilliant person who graduated from a school called HEC. It is the best business school in France. She comes from a powerful family from Mali. One day we were discussing the situation in Mali back in 2013, and she told me that she knew what the solution for Mali was. I was curious, of course. I asked, "What's that solution?" Her answer was simple. The only solution for Mali was to be recolonized by France. She was not joking. She was deadly serious. As I said, she comes from the Malian bourgeoisie and went to one of the best schools in France. She and many others with her background are poised to become the next African leaders. What do you think they will do? Do you think they will work to make Africa powerful? Do you think that they think that it's even possible for Africans to be powerful? Of course, absolutely not. Let's read Cheikh Anta Diop, who was already aware of this huge issue. In 1956, he wrote in an article named Alert Under the Tropics. So that is Baba Cheikh Anta Diop talking. The imperialists in Africa are giving up a little ballast so as to cause a delay in the awareness of the people. Correlatively, they take advantage of this delay to reorganize their colonial system on definitive basis. They have the technical and scientific means at the present time and can ensure that in 20 years, African will forever lose all chances of becoming masters at home. They think that the best way to achieve this result is to transform the African intelligentsia, which could have played a revolutionary role, into a bourgeoisie whose class interests will henceforth coincide with those of the occupier. This article was written in 1956. So, end quote. Do you know what's the scariest thing for me? It's that Cheikh Anta Diop was right, and the imperialists have largely succeeded in their neocolonialist project. Most African elites are trained abroad in order to perpetuate a state of subservience to the neocolonial order. This is especially the case in the economic and security spheres. On the security side, most of the army senior officers are trained in Western military schools, where they are secretly recruited by various intelligence services. In the French neocolonies, most high-ranking officers go to France to be trained at the Saint-Cyr Military Academy. It's like the West Point of France. Even President Kagame, which is arguably one of the most competent presidents we have got in recent times, even he has been trained by the American Army. He attended training at the US Army Command and Staff at Fort Leavenworth in Kansas between 1989 and 1990. On the economic side, if you look at someone like Alassane Ouattara, so it's the man on the left in this picture, who is the current president of Côte d'Ivoire, you will notice that he has been a top-ranking executive at the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Or Macky Sall, the current president of Senegal, who graduated from a top French engineering school. He said that Senegal and France had a special relationship. Quote, so this is Macky Sall talking. It's true. They, the French, colonized us. There was a peaceful decolonization, but they always respected the Senegalese. End quote. And he declared that, so this is the quote actually on the picture right now, it's in French. So here's the English translation. The Senegalese infantry regiments, when they were in the barracks, were entitled to deserts, while other Africans did not. So this president is basically saying that the French are our friends and the French treated the Senegalese people and soldiers well in World War I, because they gave us deserts. That's crazy. That's just crazy. In Haiti, they put into power guys like Michel Martelly, aka Sweet Mikey or Sweet Mike. He was president of Haiti from 2011 to 2016. So this is this guy, Michel Martelly. I will just play this clip for a few seconds so you can see who this guy is. So this is Michel Martelly, Sweet Mickey. This guy has been president of Haiti from 2011 and 2016. How can we expect that the country will go up, the country will uplift itself and its citizens when you have a president like that? I mean, just no comment. Now we can ask, why as a people we are putting up with all these puppets? Do we find normal to have puppets as leaders? Do we find normal to be in a car driven by zombies? Unfortunately, yes. We find it normal to live in zombie countries because we have been zombified by the neocolonial power. As Sheikh Anta Diop, I'll try to exit this YouTube video. Okay, so we find it normal to live in those zombie countries. So here it's a cover of the Fela single Zombie. It's a very instructive song about the zombification of the African army in Nigeria in the 17th. And we have been zombified, and we think it's normal to have those kind of regimes in our countries. As Sheikh Anta Diop foresaw it, we have been brainwashed over many decades in order for us to behave like zombies. It was all part of a plan. Brainwashing is the third principle under which neocolonialism operates. Sheikh Anta Diop highlighted the fact that the most important element of a culture is the language. Language is the tool we use to think. A broken thinking tool means broken thoughts. A poisoned thinking tool means a poisoned brain. A foreign thinking tool means zombification. A zombie is a person who is no more able to act according to her own will, in accordance with her self-preservation interests. A zombie is a person who will routinely do things that hurt herself, routinely and mindlessly. When you talk to African people on the streets, many will say that we need to have foreign languages as our official languages. They will say that English, French, Portuguese allows communicating with the whole world. They will say that having African languages as official languages will isolate us. Of course, this is zombie speech. Iceland is a tiny country with a tiny population of only 360,000 people. Unsurprisingly, since it's not a neocolonial country, people are acting according to their own interests and have Icelandic as the only official language. They are no more isolated than Senegal, Mali, or Nigeria, who all have a foreign colonial language as their official language. The brainwashing system put in place by the neocolonialist power is vast and comprehensive. First, we have the imposition of colonial languages as the sole official languages used by the administration in the schools, well, everywhere that's important. The language dictatorship is supported by special institutions created to guarantee the domination of these languages. One of the most powerful is the Francophonie, which mostly comprises former French colonies. The funny thing is, what will happen if you asked a French person in France to speak in English instead of French? Well, this experiment has already been done. During the 2010, I think it was 2010, I'm not sure, but I think it was 2010. It was the World Cup of Rugby. And a journalist asked Sébastien Chabal, so this is the man that you see on the picture right now, a famous French player, a question in English. So he was asking to Chabal, if he could ask his interview question in English. What do you think the response of Chabal was? I will just play the clip.
Ask you a question in English?
No. We are in France. We speak French. Okay. Merci.
So Chabal's response was very simple. No, I can't answer questions asked in English in France. We are in France, so we speak French. Okay? And he just left. This is what the French people think about the importance of speaking their own language. Of course, we Africans, as brainwashed as we are, we think that it's our duty to speak French. This is just craziness. This is zombification. Look at the map of the Francophonie. So here in purple, you have the countries who are Francophonie members. So the Francophonie is an organization that has been created by France to promote the use of the French language. So you can see that most of the members are concentrated in Africa. And one thing that the map doesn't show is the population number, because here you see Canada and a few countries in Europe, but none of them, except Quebec in Canada, which is tiny, have the French language as their official language. Only the African countries do. So in terms of population, actually, most people who live in an officially French-speaking country live in Africa. And the most officially French-speaking country in the world is the Democratic Republic of Congo today. So we are even more French than the French. Also, one thing that we need to worry about is that in a lot of coastal countries like Côte d'Ivoire, Cameroon, Gabon, or Angola, a lot of young people do not speak any African language now, and this is something that will accelerate if nothing is done to radically change the situation. Other organizations, like the Commonwealth, are also mostly brainwashing tools. They are zombification tools. How is it possible for Jamaica to still have the Queen of England as head of state? Maybe I'm wrong, but Brother Shakara will be able to correct me, but I think she is still the head of state of Jamaica. Why doesn't the Asante king in Ghana get also to be king of England? Right? But certainly, the most powerful brainwashing tools that have been put in place to zombify the African people are the two that will follow. The first weapon of mass zombification is religion, without any doubt. This is why even when French troops were firing bullets on peaceful protesters in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire in 2004, many of the protesters were replying by calling Jesus. Of course, Jesus didn't show up. Let me tell you another story I came across recently. It's the story of a courageous man called Namfo Diaby, Ismail Namfo Diaby. He is a famous imam, a Muslim priest in Guinea. I don't know if we pronounce Guinea or Ghanea. It's Guinea-Conakry, country where the capital is Conakry. So why is Namfo Diaby famous? He is famous because he has decided to conduct the Muslim prayer in the Manding language, the Bambara language, instead of Arabic. Guess what happened to him? I will just first play some of the reactions on the street. I don't understand the Bamana language, the Manding language, so I can't translate for you what the people are saying. But just look at the excitement, at how heated is the discussion. Let's play.
Donc on y a fait calo et na tout le monde salam alaykoum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh mrabo fambe la denina kankan fambe mankan fambe ku be ku suka na gouvernement la yan fambe mara dede nu kumena alla nu kujumana en ya fait calo ambade mara ay kunjumana ya a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim bismillahir rahmanir rahim alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin amana filala amana sabala anna ni kelempelila ala dina ka te kelendi kanka kono ya membra kan saliga mina fakbe kangrero beni sheme dina te kelendi wallan kan si kan nya biama la dina ba keni kemeli la dina ba moasoro maninga ye bisensoro la dina to be ye bisensoro andu maninga dina be kemesoro kemelo si Allahu akbar nam manguri kanyi datu din nam marenu ye nam masya kanye kana dina ro tie ande no kele kamade Allahu akbar dina lo Allahu akbar kana tinya suma akana di fosro anna kemelo sini akana kula ko Allahu akbar ko ju so le sokono ya sukunu ba le sokono ya ko du tika le sokono ya wo yelle tienne ka albana ne la kidra mena kanela ande ko se dina kisema Allah na do yemen kanyindi dina ro tiene ibadina.
So I think you got the vibes of that day. So this was a reaction in the streets after the imam started to conduct his prayers in African languages. So they think, I don't know if they are those particular people that we see on the video are against it or for it, because I don't understand the Bamnan language, but by the heat of a discussion, I will say that they are mostly against. So maybe we need to confirm that later. But anyway, most people in the Islamic League, the local Islamic League, were furious and say that it was blasphemy to conduct a Muslim prayer in an African language, and all prayers must be done in Arabic. So that is the reaction. Now I will show you what happened to Namfo Diaby and his family and his property. So here, this is the daughter of the Imam of Namfo Diaby. So I will play it for a few minutes so you can see what happened to his house. So this is what happened to his mosque and his house and his properties, and a group of young people, very excited, very angry, came to his house and just destroyed everything. And he has also now been forbidden from any preaching activity. His personal security is at risk. Can you imagine your own people attacking you for simply wanting to pray in an African language? This is the zombification of Africa. The second weapon of mass zombification is the school. African schools are all around the world super efficient zombie factories. They churn out zombies at an industrial scale and at an industrial pace. The programs are aligned with European programs and do not correspond to the local needs of our countries. In some of our countries, like Haiti, most of the schools are managed by Christian churches or NGOs, so-called NGOs. When you look at the history and the goals of a colonial school, you understand why is that the case. For example, at the beginning of French colonization, they had a system that they call the school of the hostages, or the hostage school. They took by force the sons of chiefs and put them in those schools. So I'll try to move up to the next slide. So here is one example of those hostage schools. Actually, it's the first. It's in a town called Saint-Louis in Senegal. The town is called Saint-Louis du Senegal. So in these hostage schools, they took by force the sons of the chiefs and they put them in those schools to brainwash them and transform them into zombies who will work against themselves and against their own people. One famous example is the case of Louis Faidherbe, a French colonial officer who led the conquest of Senegal. Faidherbe created the first hostage school, so it's that one, in 1855 in Senegal. And one of his victims was a young boy called Sidia Diop. Sidia Diop was the son of a great warrior queen and resistant Ndate Yala Mbodj. So this is a picture of this great queen in Senegal. She was the queen of the kingdom of Wallo. She had been defeated by Faidherbe after a brutal war. Her son, Sidia Diop, was taken by Faidherbe in his hostage school, in his school of hostages. Faidherbe rebaptized Sidia with a new name, Léon, which was the middle name of Faidherbe. So the name of Faidherbe was Louis Léon Faidherbe. So he called Sidia now Léon. He brainwashed Sidia, like the other hostages, in the idea of the glory of France, in the idea that it was great to be a servant of France, with French names and French clothes. Fortunately, this time, after he was released from that prison school, Sidia took back his African name and African clothes and restarted the war of resistance against the French. Unfortunately, most of the other victims, the other so-called students, followed the brainwashing programs according to the plan. This is why the first president of Senegal, Léopold Sédar Senghor, so here is Léopold Sédar Senghor, and here is a picture of the students who were in those schools. So this is why we have guys like this man, Léopold Sédar Senghor, who, in addition to be a staunch enemy of Cheikh Anta Diop, was also an expert at French grammar. He was elected as a member of the Académie Française, where they discuss about new words in the French language and set the standard of the French language. He spent his last days of his life in a villa in Normandy in France with his French wife. So this is a picture of him after he has been president of Senegal for decades, and he chose to spend the rest of his life in France, like a Frenchman, because he has been transformed into a Frenchman, really. He is in his beautiful house in Normandy, and he will die there. He will die in Normandy, in France. And at his funerals, the funerals will be organized in Senegal. No French president and not even the prime minister came to attend the funerals. So that is how you are paid when you are a traitor. There are many other brainwashing systems that have been set up, but the entire neocolonial school brainwashing system is really designed to produce zombies like Senghor on a mass scale. So we have seen how neocolonialism hides itself, how it uses puppets to control our countries, and how it sets up brainwashing system to produce those kind of puppets that it needs to control our countries. So we have covered 3 of the 5 main mechanisms that neocolonialism use. So there are a lot of there are a lot more, but I choose to focus on 5. So let's see the 2 last ones: stealing and killing. So stealing, as I said earlier, the end goal of neocolonialism, as with neocolonialism before, is to maintain and grow the wealth of a neocolonial power at the expense of its neocolonies. How do neocolonial powers extract wealth from their neocolonies? The first tool neocolonial powers use to extract wealth from their neocolonies is the monetary instrument. Most of you know about the franc CFA system. It's the currency created and controlled by France that all French neocolonies use. Around 15 countries, from Senegal to Congo, and also in the Comore Island in the Ocean Indian. So you can see it's on the right of the picture, bottom right corner. It's the Comore Island. So what are the drawbacks of this system? First, these countries had to store up to half of their foreign reserve, 50% of their foreign reserves of money. So when they earn dollars, yen, won, when they sell their products on the international markets, they have to put half of this money in the French public treasury, which in turn will lend them their own money with interests. That's crazy. So you put your money in the French treasury, and then if you need your money, it will lend it to you with interest. 2, with this system, those countries can decide of their own monetary, they can't decide of their own monetary policy. For example, they can't decide to lower the interest rates to give more loans to their local entrepreneurs and stimulate their economy. They can't do that. 3, the system also facilitates the flight of capital from the neocolonies to France, with all French companies repatriating their profits to France without any control, as well as the local elite doing the same. For example, the president of Côte d'Ivoire that has been installed, put in place by the French and stayed president for decades. It was the first president of Côte d'Ivoire. his name was Houphouët-Boigny, Félix Houphouët-Boigny. This president was not ashamed to say publicly that, as all wise men, he had put his money in Switzerland. So this franc CFA system facilitates this kind of stealing money and putting it into France and Switzerland and other European countries. 4. The franc CFA is aligned with the euro. It has a fixed parity rate, so that there is a fixed exchange rate between the franc CFA and the euros. That means that when the euros goes up, the franc CFA goes up, and when the euros goes down, the franc CFA goes down. The problem, of course, is that the euros is organized for European countries, and it follows European monetary policies. So when it will go up, that means that the African countries will suffer. Why? Because the franc CFA will then be super expensive because it will go up with the euro. And that means that the African countries, for those countries that use the franc CFA, their products will be super expensive on the international market, and they will be less competitive. For example, we have certainly already heard the United States and other Western powers complain that China was manipulating their currency, the yuan, to keep it undervalued. So that will make China products cheaper and more competitive. So this is the kind of accusation that we will never see for the countries who are under the franc CFA, because their money is actually a form of euro. Now that people have started to mobilize against this stealing, especially with organizations like Urgence Panafricaniste of brother Kémy Séba, the French government has announced that they will change the currency. So here you see an example of that mobilization. So it's a man who's burning a note of franc CFA in solidarity with what Kémy Séba has done. So that movement have started to get very big and very loud. So the French government has decided to react, and they have been proactive to fight this independence movement. So the French government has announced that it will change the currency. So they are saying that the franc CFA will be no more. It won't be called franc CFA anymore. Actually, it will be a new currency that will be called the ECO. The problem is that it's just some cosmetic changes, because there is just the name that will be changing and a few things that don't matter. And the ECO was actually the name that was chosen before, previously to all this agitation. The ECO was the name that was chosen by the West African Economic Organization for a common currency for all of West Africa, including Nigeria and Ghana. So by renaming the franc CFA into ECO, what the French government has done is to hijack simply the regional project that was going on already with this franc CFA rebranding. And with that move, what they are hoping to do is to maintain the system indefinitely. So they are very clever, and they plan for the long term, you see, because they know that by doing that, it will be very difficult now for countries like Nigeria or Ghana to get in this regional currency that they were building. So the project will be dead. So the fight continues. Regarding the countries that have their own currencies, let's not think that they are not subject to monetary domination too. in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as in Haiti. The US dollar is used on every market and is more trusted than the local currencies. Those are extreme cases, but the other countries with independent currencies are subject to self-monetary repression. This is a term coined by the Cameroonian economist Joseph Chudang-Pwemi, who wrote a fundamental book entitled Currency, Servitude, and Liberty. So this is the cover of the book. Unfortunately, there has been no translation into English, to my knowledge, but this book is so powerful, and this is fundamental to understand how currency can be used to develop a country, can be used to give wealth to a country, or on the contrary, can be used to enslave a country. So the book in English will be called Currency, Servitude, and Liberty. And Joseph Chudang-Pwemi was an economist who was working at a very high level in international institutions. And the problem is that he decided to break from this environment and write this book because he thought that it was necessary. And it also knew that it was dangerous to write this book. And unfortunately, as we could have expected, he died mysteriously in 1984, very young. So Joseph Chudang-Pwemi is an ancestor that we have to remember and to study, because he did a wonderful, wonderful work on how we can use money, the monetary system, to be stronger and to make wealth. Maybe we can touch on that during the discussion. The other instrument of stealing is the debt system. Western countries, China, and institutions like the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank give loans to the bad leaders they have put in place to fund public projects. So typically you will see that those loans, when they are not directly embezzled by the so-called local leaders, those funds are used to create schools, to build roads and hospitals. This is the usual narrative. The problem is that fundamentally schools, roads, and hospitals do not make money. They don't. Maybe only indirectly and in the very long term, because your population will get smarter, healthier, and commerce, trade in the country will be facilitated by the road. But you can see that this is very long term, and there is no way that if I give you money to build roads, the roads will directly give back the money. And the lenders know it very well that those loans can't be paid back. They just can't. So this lending system is just a tool used to force the debtor countries to apply policies that will be detrimental to their people. The plan is, we will give you this money that we know you won't be able to pay back, and when it will be time to reimburse the loan, we'll come back to you and we'll tell you, okay, you don't have the money to pay back, no problem. Here is what you can do, and we will give you new money so you can pay us back. So we'll give you new loans. You see, so it's infinitely scalable, this model. So what will happen is that when you won't be able to pay your debt, the IMF, the World Bank, and the lenders, countries like Europe and even China, will come back and push you to apply policies like structural adjustment. So structural adjustment is a policy where public companies are sold to foreign companies for ridiculously cheap sums of money. Or we are told that we need to cut the budget for everything that is essential, like education, like health, like public services. Everything will be cut. And we will also have the imposition of pseudo-democratic reforms like same-sex marriage, which is in no way a priority problem for the mass of our people. So in Haiti, recently President Jovenel Moïse has issued a decree that institutes fines and prison sentences for officiants who refuse to perform same-sex weddings. Can you imagine? I don't think that the Haitian people got up and asked his president to create this kind of policy, and it's a policy that has been put in place by decree, so there has been no vote around that. So where did he get this idea from? Was that a request from the Haitian people or from his neocolonialist masters? In Nigeria, Gabon, and Angola, debt reimbursements represented more than 60% of the public revenues in 2017. More than 60%. How can you grow with a huge burden like that? You can't. Imagine if 60% of your salary was going into paying back debt. 60% of your salary into debt. Will you be able to even feed your family? Obviously not. In countries like South Korea, the government of General Park Chung-hee in the 60s used the loans to fund profit-making companies like Samsung instead of just public roads and schools. That way, they were sure that they would be able to pay it back, and they did. So it's all about the choices that our leaders make. Also, if we look at the local industries, so we have seen the currency, we have seen the debt. Now let's look at production, how companies are doing the production in our countries. What are we able to produce ourselves, and what we leave to foreign interests to produce and profit from? So maybe you have heard of something called M-Pesa in Kenya. So M-Pesa is a mobile money solution, and it's hailed as a great innovation from Africa. So when I was in Kenya, for example, you could almost pay for everything with this mobile money. So you just need your phone, and you pay everything with your phone. You don't need to have a credit card. You don't need to have cash. You just use your phone. So it's very advanced in some ways. And that's why people are talking about Silicon Savannah. So it's like Silicon Valley, but in Kenya. And that kind of news make us usually very proud, and we are happy to see some progress, which is, of course, legitimate. And when you look a little bit closer, it turns out that M-Pesa was created and is controlled by a company called Safaricom. So it's a telco company, and it is one of the main, if not the first, telco company in Kenya. And Safaricom is owned by a company called Vodafone, which is a British company. And you will see that in almost all the cases, we have set up like that, where you have an African sounding name, an African sounding company like Safaricom, Safari, like travel, and actually this is nothing African under the curtain. In the shareholding agreement, you will see that most of the shareholders are actually European or Chinese. They are foreign owners of those companies. So this is not an African company at all. Even basic drinks, so very, very basic products like drinks soft drinks, beers are produced by foreign companies on our soil with African sounding names. For example, you have the Pierre Castell Group, and it is a French family-owned business. So this guy, the white guy in the middle, is Pierre Castell. I don't know where this picture has been taken, but he was being decorated somewhere in Africa by one of our zombies leaders. So these guys, the Pierre Castell Group, claim to have 25% share of the profits from the African beer market. Just one company, they have 25% share of the profits of the entire African beer market. And they are only the number 4 company. The first 3 companies are, the 3 first company are Molson Coors Beverage Company, which is American, North American. You have Heineken, which is not African, and you have Guinness, which is not African. So even basic drinks like beers, we can't produce. Most of the ports also, where we do our shipping, our international shipping, are operated by foreign companies. If you go to the website of the Bolloré Group, you will find that they have a monopoly. I will try to do that and go to the website of Bolloré. So let's say Bolloré Group, Bolloré Port in Africa. Let's say, and here you can see the map and you can see the list of the different ports that Bolloré operates. So you can see in Mauritania, in Senegal, in Guinea, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, etc. So they are mostly in Africa. And if you look at Asia, they have nothing. If you look at the Americas, of course, they have Haiti. Except at Haiti, they have nothing. So they do most of their money in the African continent. They virtually have the monopoly on African ports, at least in the French-speaking countries. And what I find very, very, very disturbing is something like that. I don't know if you have already seen this picture of this monument. It's called the African Renaissance Monument. It's in Senegal. And it's a structure that has been ordered by President Abdoulaye Wade. I think it was in 2000. I don't remember the exact date. But this statue has been commissioned, and the goal is to show a vision of an Africa, of a new Africa, an Africa that is powerful, an Africa that is wealthy, an Africa that is standing up. So this is the African Renaissance Monument. The problem is this monument has been built by North Korea. It was a North Korean company that President Wade called to build this monument. And the monument was designed by a Romanian architect. So what is African in this statue? Nothing. Nothing. So the government we have, even a freaking statue, they can't build themselves. They can't build that. They can't build a statue. We built pyramids, now we can't build any statue. This is crazy. This is so crazy. Of course, it's not because we have no engineers. We have engineers. It's not because we don't have technicians. We have technicians. It's not because we don't have any people who are good leader material. We have good leaders. We have potential good leaders, a lot of them. The problem is that in order for a country to become independent and wealthy, it needs good leaders. In our countries, the good leaders are systematically killed. Ultimately, killing is the backbone of neocolonialism. We have to be very clear about that. In his book, Blueprints for Black Power, Dr. Amos Wilson was speaking about different types, different forms of power. And he was saying something like, power is like water. It can take different forms. And you can have psychological power over a person. You can be a figure of authority. And because you are a figure and authority, an expert, people will follow you. You have some kind of power over them. You can have economic power. You can have different kind of power. But he was explaining that ultimately also the most powerful form of power, the ultimate, is violence, it's force. And this is a very costly form of power to use because it's dangerous, it's expensive, but in the end, this is the most powerful form. It settles all debates. So, killing is the backbone of neocolonialism. Violence is the backbone of neocolonialism. When we have good leaders, they are killed or they are ousted by force. The real reason why Africa has not emerged yet as a world power that can ensure the well-being of its people on the continent and in the diaspora is that most of our good leaders have been killed or ousted violently. They have killed Jean-Jacques Dessalines in Haiti and replaced him with Alexandre Pétion. They have killed Patrice Lumumba in Congo-Kinshasa and replaced him with Mobutu. They killed Modibo Keïta in Mali and replaced him with Moussa Traoré. They killed Sylvanus Olympio in Togo and replaced him with Nyasimbe Eyadema. His son is still in power today. They ousted Kwame Nkrumah and replaced him with Joseph Arthur Ankra, a crooked general. They have killed Omniobe in Cameroon and replaced him with Amadou Ahidjo. They killed Barthélemy Boganda in Centrafrique. Boganda was talking about having a federation of Central African states. That was too dangerous. So they killed him and replaced him with David Dacko, who was a puppet. And David Dacko has been replaced by France by Jean Bedel Bokassa, who crowned himself emperor and was a clown. And then they replaced him with David Dacko again. This is just crazy. They killed Amilcar Cabral in the streets of Conakry in Guinea. They plotted a huge number of coups in Guinea and parachuted immense amounts of fake money to kill the country's economy. It was raining fake money on Conakry. They brought up like Portuguese mercenaries to try to oust President Ahmed Sékou Touré, and he was one of the ones who have been able to resist over many decades against those kind of attempts. So we have to study Sékou Touré, Ahmed Sékou Touré very carefully. They have also ousted in recent times people like Laurent Gbagbo in Côte d'Ivoire. And Laurent Gbagbo was not even a Pan-Africanist. He was not a revolutionary. He was just a nationalist and was trying to get better contracts with different powers than France. So they funded a rebellion, an armed rebellion. They bombed his house after decades of war, and they replaced him with Alassane Ouattara. Of course, they killed Gaddafi in Libya and replaced him with chaos. And this chaos have been spilling over all the Sahelian area. So in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger, in Chad, even in Côte d'Ivoire. Chaos everywhere. Here is how they killed peaceful protesters in Côte d'Ivoire. So here, of course, is an image from the brutal reign of Leopold in the Congo, where they killed millions of people directly and indirectly. And here is some footage of a peaceful protest in Abidjan, in Côte d'Ivoire, in 2004, against the presence of France, of the French military, and of the French coup. So they are in a place called Hôtel Ivoire, and they are French soldiers who are stationed in the hotel, and it's next to the palace of the president.